It was in October of 2004 that a lumbar disc replacement came out and was passed by the FDA called the Charité lumbar disc replacement, made by DePuy or Johnson and Johnson that owns them. And I was very suspicious because it was really a minimal number of patients, 300 patients, and they had excluded the first 25% of all the patients that had been the experimental group, which you never do in science or medicine. They just threw out those results, and usually those are the ones that have the problems. And the control group they compared it to was a control group that had a 60% failure rate. And so since this was a non-inferiority study, it was very low bar to jump over. And so I was really kind of stunned that this thing was allowed to go through. It made no mechanical sense because it was hard plastic and it didn't really replicate the mechanics of the lumbar disc. So I later saw that these were basically people that were paid a lot of money, and the doctors that were putting them in didn't realize this. And it resulted in my opinion going to the Wall Street Journal in an article, and started the idea, I believe, that there's little transparency in medicine as far as research, that doctors will come out and advocate new products, new devices, new pills, new medicines, and their colleagues being very trusting, which I believe 90% of physicians are very trusting and just want to do the right thing, will end up using those products, not realize that they're really biased and manipulated research often. So as a result, after that, the Association for Medical Ethics, which was originally the Association for Ethics in Spine Surgery, but it expanded because a lot of people wanted to join it, so we made it a general title. The Association for Medical Ethics was started by myself and co-founder Gemma Cunningham, who is a medical publicist. And we both ended up just devoting our time pro bono to this. It ended up in about 400 or 500 physicians joining it, the sort of silent majority that believed there should be transparency, and there wasn't. And it went very much against what industry wanted, because in a nutshell, if industry, medical device makers or pharmaceuticals come up with a product, they want it to be brought out as if it's independently researched and not influenced by money by any means. And that way it gets into the market very quickly. So the idea of transparency, of being able to reveal that these authors, or having to reveal that the authors were paid anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions of dollars, would defeat the purpose of getting it out there. So they didn't like this idea. Association for Medical Ethics wrote a letter to Senator Grassley, which I wrote, and it was about transparency in medicine. And after I got a call the next day from his chief of staff and talked for a few hours, it seemed that about 9 months later, the proposal for the law came out, and that was sponsored by Senator Grassley and Senator Cole. And the Association for Medical Ethics, because of its membership and grassroots organization, was asked to speak in favor of the Sunshine Act at a Senate subcommittee hearing to debate its passage. And I represented the Association for Medical Ethics, so I was the one that spoke there. There were no other physicians there. There was great background animosity by companies, as well as the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, as well as the North American Spine Society, that I be there speaking, because these are associations that are largely influenced by big industry that sponsors them a great deal. So they become very much advocates in a large sense, as much for industry as they are for patients. Anyway, I ended up testifying, and the law ultimately got passed as part of the Obama Accountable Care Act, and it's due to be enacted with public release of data in 2014. There's a question about when it becomes public data. by the Centers of Medicare and Medicare who are collecting the data, but nevertheless in 2014 it should. I think that it will result in a lot of people, and mostly doctors, if not patients, looking to see who wrote the papers advocating the new products that should be out there that they should try. And if they see that they were written by people that were highly paid or have royalties, which is fine, it's the American way, then they will wait and see if these products work before jumping into them. The Association for Medical Ethics is not opposed to anybody having a consulting fee or royalties or making a lot of money off of some invention or discovery that they make. It is the American way. It's purely a matter of transparency of the people that are going to use the product or the procedure, just knowing the background and the finances of it. That's all. It's only transparency, nothing more than that. So there's no opposition to doctors working with industry to develop new products. This is purely about transparency. And I think it'll bring to the surface the truly independent as well as effective products more going forward, instead of products that are maybe so-so and are sort of pushed by industry just because they invested a lot of money in developing them. So I think it'll be a very positive thing for both medicine, for patients, and for doctors. May not be so good for industry. They have to put more time and effort in making sure products are really strong, but it'll be overall good for the country.
So how did you get, Mr. Mitchell spoke about how it took about a total of like 4 to 5 years to get the Sunshine Act passed, and that a lot of bumps along the road, have it being an effort both on the physician side, the manufacturing side, and patients to go on board with this. For those on the industry side, I bet, like you said, there are negatives to this act that they will probably feel, repercussions. How did you get them on board then with the act? Were there a lot of setbacks in terms of convincing them, certain people who were opposed to having it passed, and how did you get them to get on board?
Well, I didn't get them to get on board. I don't think they really ever wanted to get on board. Rather, it was more a fact that this became initially not passed prior to the Accountable Care Act. There was the debate was put off that year in 2008, and then was put into the Accountable Care Act as part of it the next year, the year after, and it was passed as part of that. So I think the fact is that the companies and the medical societies did not want that, but after it became evident that this was coming down the line and going to be passed, whether they liked it or not, they turned around and started saying that they were in favor of it. They thought this was good. They were now going to, some companies voluntarily start giving their data. So that's what the public relations aspect of it would be, but the reality is that they were very opposed to it. So they never were on board about it, and they aren't really to this day, I don't believe. Even the American Medical Association, for some reason, believes that there should not be any transparency about who is paid when they give continuing medical education courses. For some reason, they believe, and got this through as a regulation, or rather a enactment rule, that there was no need to reveal that since these were quote unquote certified. So there's still a heavy industry influence in trying to get around these rules to a large degree, and to some degree they're successful in getting around. There are a number of loopholes. So in answer to your question, I don't think industry is on board. They're just forced to because it's the law now. Well, I think it'll have an impact sooner than most people think. The dissemination of information by the internet now is really very quick and almost instantaneous. 80% of people look to the internet now for information about medicine, doctors, hospitals, and that information is going to be more readily available and more extensive in its format pretty quickly. So I don't think it's going to take a year or two after its release for people to find out about it. I mean, if you have a YouTube video that a couple find out, and then the next 10 million people within 24 hours, why would one think it's going to take that long for people to realize they can find out about their doctor or about these devices that have failed or these drugs that have failed in much longer time when it involved even more critical issues? So I don't think it's going to be really a long time until it has a significant impact in directing medical care in terms of what drugs people take, what new devices they want to do, what doctors they go to. So no, I don't think it'll take a long period of time. I think it'll be a lot quicker than people think. It wasn't seen as good probably by the similar people that don't find it as good now. And those almost exclusively were limited to people whose pocketbook was going to be affected, namely medical consultants on the payroll of big companies that didn't want this transparency out there about research. And even after the chairman, who is gone now, the previous chairman, who was an industry consultant, tried to fire me, he ultimately got fired. It didn't stop after that, where other people would, in the first few years, 2005 and 6, come up to the current chairman and say that I was disrupting medicine and that I should be fired. His answer routinely was, well, what has Dr. Rosen done that's either illegal or immoral? And the conversation would stop. But that repeatedly occurred for a number of years. And it also, there was retribution through some of the medical societies in a significant way that was attempted, including a really made-up accusation breaking its own bylaws by the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons to try and discredit me. The only way that was stopped was a 2-page letter from Senator Cole to the American Academy reminding them that intimidation of a federal witness or retribution after testimony is a felony, and they would pursue it with the Department of Justice unless the Academy stopped, which they did 2 weeks later. So it was a great deal of tension over a number of years, and I think it affected me like it would affect anyone. It made things tense somewhat, made family life tense somewhat, work a bit tense. But ultimately, patients appreciated it. The majority of doctors, 90%, began to understand it and appreciated it. And so it kind of turned around. And I think that's ultimately how I got at least for the period of time on the short list for Surgeon General, I was just one of the few people that maybe was now on the cusp of the new favored wave of change, whereas previously it was, on the enemy side of change. So it kind of went 180 degrees. So up until the present time, AME accomplished its goal of getting the Sunshine Act passed, and now we're just kind of riding the wave and waiting to see what the effects of it are going to be. People just have to be have a reality check that companies are out to make a profit, and which is what they're expected to do for their shareholders. Pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, private insurance companies. But regardless of whatever the rhetoric is that comes out about patient care and how this is their prime concern, just realize it is not. It is profit. It is what their fiduciary responsibility is, and that's the way it should be. But it is the doctor's responsibility to the patient that really is what's most important. And following the financial transparency is a reasonable thing to do, to be aware of how it affects your medical care. And I'd probably just end with that. People are generally pretty smart and put two and two together. They just need the information to put two and two together. And I think the Sunshine Act and the transparency with the information coming out will allow people to do that.